Dead weight, he said into the mic, in front of 80 people and a breakfast tray of lukewarm croissants. He said it like a joke, but his eyes didn't smile. Mine didn't blink. I was still holding the printout, the supply timeline I'd stayed up past midnight mapping out, complete with red-flagged shipment delays from our only vendor. I opened my mouth to clarify. He lifted his hand and said it again, louder this time. You can't have dead weight slowing the train down, right, folks? Laughter, nervous, crooked, the kind that smells like bad breath and ass-kissing. He kept going. We need sharks, not barnacles. His little speech continued, but I wasn't listening. I was staring at the stapled edge of my chart, wondering how many years of loyalty it took to become a punchline. That was the moment. The exact second I knew it was over. 7 years in that building. Not one of them ever really saw me. They saw deliverables. They saw spreadsheets. They saw that I didn't flirt in meetings or fake enthusiasm over ping-pong tables and after-hours culture nights. What they didn't see, what he didn't bother to ask, was that I was the only reason our factory hadn't gone belly up 2 fiscal years ago. And now I was a barnacle, so I stood up. Quietly. No screw you, no scene. I just gathered my mug, the blue one with the cracked handle, and nevertheless, she procured in fading cursive, my notebook and my badge. I left the printout on the table. Stapled, highlighted, ignored. I didn't look back. You only look back when something's unfinished. I was done. And hey, if you've made it this far into the story, maybe hit that subscribe button. 97% of y'all listen without subscribing, and trust me, it helps way more than you think. Teams pouring black coffee and broken sleep into these stories. Keep us caffeinated, yeah? Anyway, I walked past the interns trying not to make eye contact, past HR pretending to type urgent emails, past the CFO who'd once said I was scary good at locking in vendors. I didn't feel scary. I felt scraped out, hollow, like my name had just been peeled off the office wall and tossed into the janitor's cart with the stale motivational posters. By the time I hit the parking lot, my fingers were buzzing. Not from anger, not yet from clarity like a headache lifting, like seeing the second layer of a magic trick. Because here's what no one in that room knew, not HR, not the CFO, not even the smug little CEO with his dollar store charisma and a leadership podcast addiction. 2 years ago, when our supplier was on the ropes, I didn't just save the relationship. I bought in. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. The ink on the controlling interest transfer was dry before the Christmas party they never invited me to. But that day, that walkout, that wasn't revenge. That was just me getting out of their way, letting gravity do the rest. By 7:42 p.m., the office was dark except for that stupid glowing fish tank in reception, the one marketing insisted elevated the client experience, even though it smelled like shrimp farts and dead algae. I was alone, unless you count the janitor humming Garth Brooks 2 floors down and the IT guy passed out in his cubicle with an open bag of Cheez-Its on his chest. I packed slow. Not because I was sentimental, but because I knew once I left, I'd never come back through those doors except as a ghost. You move differently when you're walking out of your own murder scene. I took the essentials, my notebooks, handwritten, no traceable docs, my mug still warm, coffee half drunk, and the one photo I kept taped behind the monitor, me and Marta, the supplier's CEO, laughing in hard hats at the loading dock the day we signed our first deal. No one ever noticed it was even there. Fitting. I deleted the contents of my personal folder with surgical precision. Not just files, breadcrumbs, no Slack convos, no email trails, no birthday card scans. Gone. The way the rest of me would be in about 10 minutes. I wiped the keyboard clean with a disinfectant wipe. Not for them, for me, for ritual. And then I did the only truly sentimental thing. I left a sticky note on my plant. Take care of this, it said. No signature. If they don't know who it's from, they don't deserve the plant. The flashback hit as I powered down the screen. 2 years ago, me, flying coach to Milwaukee because procurement wouldn't expense business class, knees crushed against the tray table, scribbling a contingency clause on a napkin. Marta met me at the terminal same day, her expression unreadable. Back then, her company was one late invoice away from collapse, and she said something I'll never forget: if you walk, we die. If you stay, I'll make sure you never regret it. Most people took that as desperation. I took it as opportunity. Over dinner at a fake Bavarian pub that reeked of onion rings and broken dreams, we wrote the first draft of the clause on hotel stationery. If either company undergoes material leadership changes, the other retains the right to review terms, including control transfer. A year later, during their restructuring, she offered me equity in lieu of a bonus. I accepted quietly. Another year later, she called me at 6:13 a.m. on a Tuesday. You ready? She said. I said, for what? She just laughed, majority. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was being sneaky, because I didn't need to. At home that night, I poured a glass of boxed red, kicked off my shoes, and opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. There it was. A plain envelope with my name handwritten in all caps, Lauren Michaels. Inside, shareholder agreement. Signed, notarized, binding. Underneath it, a post-it in Marta's handwriting. You were never dead weight. You were the engine. I sat on the floor, back against the cabinet, drinking that cheap wine like it was communion. Let them think I walked away. Let them think I vanished. Sometimes silence is just the sound of the trap setting. The next morning, HR sent out one of those glossy, dead-eyed emails. Subject: exciting transition in procurement strategy. Body: as part of our ongoing mission to innovate and streamline operations, we'll be transitioning key procurement workflows to an automated solution powered by state-of-the-art AI integrations. We thank Lauren Michaels for her contributions and wish her well on her next adventure. Next adventure. Like I'd won a cruise. Like they hadn't publicly vivisected me in front of a whiteboard covered in buzzwords and finger-pointed timelines. The new CEO strutted through the building that week like a rooster with a spreadsheet fetish. Even cracked a joke during the Thursday huddle. Turns out dead weight floats away on its own. The laughter this time was cleaner, rehearsed, like they'd all decided it was easier to move on than ask questions. But by Monday, the cracks started whispering. An urgent parts shipment didn't show. One of the titanium couplings we used exclusively in our temperature-controlled enclosures, a weird little part, barely bigger than a Lego brick but without it. Assembly line hits a wall. The tracking showed it in transit but never updated past the Wisconsin border. In the hallway near the vending machines, someone muttered, "Did Lauren usually handle those rush orders?" Someone else shrugged. "I thought it was automated now." Inside the ops channel on Slack, timestamps told a different story. 4 hours of silence. Then a vague message from Ricky, a junior supply chain analyst with a TikTok addiction and a face like a spooked deer. "Ricky, hey, anyone know who's taking point with supplier name redacted? I got a notice we're off cycle for the next order." A minute later, CFO, assigned to new procurement lead. "Let's not panic over one delay," so they did. Enter Gary. Gary had transferred over from sales 6 weeks ago. Wore suspenders unironically. Thought Excel macros made him dangerous. I gave him the supplier contact sheet and said, "Handle it." Gary called, got patched through. 30 seconds in, he was red in the face. Mute button fumble. Then this, Gary muttering, "They said they can't discuss the account with me without executive level clearance. I told them I was the executive contact." Silence. Gary deflating. "They said, and I quote, 'We have our own definition of executive now.'" That afternoon, production flagged another issue. Replacement components were listed as on hold pending authorization. Gary tried again. This time, they told him to direct all communication through official legal correspondence. Not a glitch, not a delay, a wall. Inside the break room, the engineers started whispering. "Did Lauren ever mention a backup vendor? Not to me. She was the vendor, kinda, wasn't she?" In marketing, someone half joked, "Did we, accidentally fire the one person keeping the lights on?" And still, leadership smiled. Pushed the AI procurement narrative. Threw around words like resilience planning and learning curve. But the panic was starting to leak through their collars. Small things, tight voices in meetings, forwarded emails with vague subject lines like urgent need clarification on sourcing authority. By Thursday, the ops dashboard had a new tab, pending/red flagged. It had 17 entries, and counting. Hidden boxes at 9:06 a.m. sharp. The subject line was so dry it almost went unnoticed. Updated terms and control notifications effective immediately. It was addressed to the CEO and CC'd to legal, procurement, and 2 external counsels no one in the building had ever heard of. Came from the supplier's general inbox, but flagged with high priority. Red exclamation mark. No emojis, no niceties, no hope this finds you well. Just business. The CEO opened it in front of half the executive team during a budget alignment meeting that had already turned into a blame tornado. He skimmed the first sentence and froze. The room, already tense, went pin drop silent. He didn't say anything, didn't even pretend to read further. Just slowly turned pale, like someone watching their GPS calmly reroute them into oncoming traffic. Without a word, he stood up, left his laptop open, walked out the glass doors, through reception, and down the hallway like a man trying to outrun a sniper beam only he could see. Procurement exchanged looks. Did he just? Should someone? Check what it says, someone finally muttered, reaching for the laptop. The message wasn't long. 3 short paragraphs, tightly worded, bulletproof in tone. Paragraph 1, notification of updated contractual terms due to recent organizational disruption on the client side. Paragraph 2, declaration of new control procedures, including named executive signatory authority changes, effective immediately and retroactively applying to all pending and future orders. Paragraph 3, all supplier communications moving forward would be redirected through the chair of the board of directors, whose contact information was now listed in full. At the bottom, a digital signature. Underneath it, a single name. Procurement stared at the screen like it had just grown teeth and bitten them. "Is that Lauren Michaels?" someone whispered. The intern from finance actually gasped. Like a soap opera plot twist just walked off the screen and slapped them. No one spoke for a full 60 seconds. Then Ricky, bless his confused little heart, said what everyone else was thinking. "Wait, she's what now?" No one had an answer. But deep down, they all knew whatever illusion of control they thought they had left just popped like a bubble under Lauren's heel. And she didn't even have to be in the building to do it. The panic began not with shouting, but with silence. Long, brittle silence. The kind that wraps around a company's throat and squeezes while everyone pretends it's just a tight deadline. Procurement tried to call the supplier. Blocked. Legal sent a request for clarification. No response. The CFO emailed a bullet list of non-negotiable needs. That email bounced back, literally, with a note that said, "Please refer all communications through updated channels per term addendum 4C." Thank you. Term addendum 4C didn't exist in their system. It did in Lauren's. By noon, leadership looked like a busted sprinkler system, flailing in every direction, spraying confusion. The CEO canceled his afternoon golf meeting. He spent most of the day behind closed doors, pacing. At one point, he came out just to snap at a junior analyst for using too many bullet points in an internal report. The analyst started crying in the stairwell. Meanwhile, over in a quiet business-class hotel across town, Lauren checked into a consultation suite under the name G. Whitaker. No reason for that name in particular, just something about the G sounded appropriately corporate. She smiled politely at the front desk, accepted the room key, and carried her laptop bag like it held nothing heavier than some light weekend planning. Inside the room, faux oak desk, blackout curtains, a fake ficus, and a complimentary mint that had fused with the plastic wrap. On the table sat a slim FedEx envelope, prearranged delivery. Inside, a packet with updated governance documents for the supplier. Freshly signed, notarized, and certified. A small sticky note clipped to the top in Marta's looping cursive read, "Welcome to the top of the food chain." She didn't gloat, didn't throw her phone or shout checkmate to the ceiling. She simply opened her laptop, plugged into the hotel Wi-Fi, and began reviewing the new quarterly forecast. Because this wasn't revenge. This was repositioning. You don't burn bridges when you can buy the toll booth and set the price. Back at HQ, the CFO was red-faced and muttering about fiduciary negligence and who the hell vetted this woman. The head of compliance pointed out meekly that Lauren's financial activity had been above board, discreet but legal, executed through a holding company with no public ties to her name. That holding company now owned 52% of the supplier. Majority, with full board voting rights, which meant she can approve or deny any term, the legal liaison said, staring down at his tablet like it had just delivered a death sentence. "She is the terms," the CFO spat. The board demanded an emergency session. One member flatly asked, "Did we know she had ownership?" The CEO blinked. Of course not, she wasn't that important. That sentence sat in the air like a fart in church. Meanwhile, Lauren sat in her consultation suite, calmly drafting a response to a competing firm in Texas, one she'd quietly courted for the past year. It recently lost their parts vendor. She had ideas. On the whiteboard behind her, she wrote one word, options. She underlined it twice and smiled. The next morning, 6 people were already in the executive conference room by 6:45 a.m., sipping burnt coffee and sweating through their button-downs. The CEO arrived late, tie crooked hair flat on one side like he'd slept in his car. No greetings, no preamble, just a white-knuckled slap of his iPad on the table. "Why is our supplier ghosting us?" No one answered, not because they didn't know, but because no one wanted to be the one to say her name out loud. The head of legal, a man who normally spoke like a tax form and smelled like mothballs and regret, finally cleared his throat. "They haven't ghosted us. They've redirected communication." Redirected to who? The CEO snapped. Legal slid a folder across the table. Inside, a printed email chain. The last line read, "Please direct all further inquiries to our chairwoman of the board per revised governance structure." Attached was a headshot, black blazer, subtle necklace, eyes locked forward like she could see the future and already decided it didn't need your opinion. Lauren Michaels, chairwoman, official. The room went silent, again. The CEO picked up the folder, stared at the photo like it was a mugshot. "She's not qualified. She owns 52%, the CFO said flatly. "That doesn't mean she has voting rights. Legal oversight, she doesn't need to be qualified. She is the board." The CEO stood, paced. His shoes squeaked on the cheap laminate like they were screaming for him. "We need to take legal action. We need to remind them who the client is." He tried. He really did. Sent a formally worded threat through corporate counsel that same afternoon. Claimed breach of implicit trust. Accused the supplier of collusion. Gave them a 48-hour deadline to resume all services under previously established terms. 4 hours later, a response came through. No apology. No concession, just "We are happy to continue business under the updated structure. All terms are now subject to approval by Chairwoman Michaels. Please confirm understanding moving forward." Below that, her signature. Digital, clean, final. Below that, footer line in bold, "Respect is the foundation of every successful partnership." The CEO lost it. He threw his phone across his office, shattering it against the window. Screamed something about traitors and ungrateful spreadsheet trolls. He summoned the IT lead, demanded every archived email Lauren had ever sent. "Find the smoking gun," he growled. There wasn't one because Lauren hadn't needed to hide anything. Every move had been by the book, quiet, patient, bulletproof. While he'd been strutting through meetings and slapping jargon onto slide decks, she'd been quietly installing the operating system under his feet. By Friday, department heads stopped asking when things would go back to normal. They started asking what Lauren wanted. And that's when it hit him, not just the logistics, but the shift. The silence in the office wasn't just confusion anymore. It was allegiance. Unspoken, unconfirmed, but there. Lauren had left the building. She hadn't left the room. She was the room. The request came in late Friday evening, sent from a procurement exec whose name Lauren barely remembered, Brad or Chad, or maybe it was Brent. One of those men who spent most of Q3 forwarding attachments and avoiding eye contact. The subject line was bland: meeting request, discuss ongoing partnership potential, no mention of the CEO. No CC to legal. Just a quiet plea typed after hours. As if the sender didn't want anyone to know he still believed bridges could be rebuilt, even if the lumber had already burned. Lauren waited until Saturday morning to respond. 1 hour. Neutral ground. Hotel Montclair Lounge, 11 a.m. Sunday. She arrived 5 minutes early. Not to intimidate, but because she didn't believe in lateness. The Montclair was polished without being flashy, leather seats, stone floors, jazz that sounded expensive without being recognizable. Place built for decisions that had already been made. He was already there, sweating lightly in a suit that still had shoulder padding from 2008. He stood when she entered like she was royalty or a resignation letter. She nodded but didn't offer her hand. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I live 10 minutes away," she replied flatly, sliding into the seat across from him. "Let's not waste the hour." He blinked, nodded, pulled out a legal pad already crumpled from thumb stress. So he started. "Obviously there's been some confusion. We'd love to reestablish the working relationship we had with your firm prior to." "We don't have a working relationship anymore," she interrupted, not harsh, just precise. "You had terms, they expired. You had leadership, it failed. Now we start from scratch." He swallowed, glanced at the lounge staff, lowered his voice like she might detonate a PR bomb in the middle of the brioche tray. "I understand. We're just hoping to, rebuild trust." Lauren sipped her coffee. Black, no sugar, eyes locked on his. "Trust," she repeated. "Let's talk about that." He sat straighter, hopeful. "You trusted an algorithm to replace humans," she said. "You trusted a man who called competence dead weight. And when the one person keeping your wheels turning walked out, trusted silence to mean compliance. You didn't ask for clarity, you didn't reach out, you just automated, you erased." He sat very still now, no blinking, no twitching. Just listening like a man watching the slow rise of floodwater from under the floorboards. Lauren set her mug down gently. "Business is still possible," she said, "but we renegotiate from a different position now." She reached into her bag, pulled out a single page. New terms, higher rates. Upfront payments, no discounts for volume, and a clause that required quarterly in-person meetings with her. He read it once, then again. "These margins are a significant change." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "So was calling me dead weight." For a long beat, he said nothing. "Then I'll take this to legal." "You'll take it to the board," she corrected. "The CEO doesn't need to be involved." And just like that, she stood, smoothed her blazer, grabbed her mug. 1 hour? Exactly. Before leaving, she turned back briefly. "I'm not here to punish," she said, "but I'm also not here to be forgotten." Then she was gone, quiet as a scalpel. The emergency board meeting was called for Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. No croissants, no press kits. Just 12 suits and one CEO who looked like he hadn't slept since Tuesday and might have tried to drown his insecurities in off-brand scotch. They started with numbers. Projected delays, revenue losses, contractual breach fines stacking like Jenga blocks in a hurricane, and then finally the procurement update. A dry-voiced VP read the bullet points. Supplier now under new executive control. Revised contract terms delivered. 18% cost increase across SKUs. Net 30 terms abolished. Exclusive production rights pending reevaluation. And then the final slide, majority ownership holder L. Michaels Holdings 52% equity silence. Heavy, padded with disbelief. One of the older board members, an ex-CFO with skin like creased paper and a voice like a snapped pencil, squinted at the slide and muttered, "Is that our Michaels?" The CEO cleared his throat, tried to adopt that fake casual swagger he'd been workshopping since he landed the role. "Yes, well, that was unexpected. Obviously, there were blind spots in our internal audit procedures. Let's not forget, Lauren never disclosed, she wasn't required to," another board member snapped. A woman in a cobalt blazer who once called the CEO a PowerPoint pirate under her breath during Q2. "She didn't owe us that disclosure. The supplier was third party. You cut her out before you asked what she built. She left of her own accord," the CEO insisted, voice tight. "She left with a mug," the paper-skinned man said, "and you handed her the factory." A soft chorus of Jesus Christ and throat clears filled the room. "Do we have any leverage?" someone asked. "She owns the vendor," someone else replied. "Can we spin this as strategic alignment? You want to spin losing our exclusive supplier as strategy?" The CEO raised both hands. "Look, this is salvageable. We just need to renegotiate," "You tried," the Cobalt Blazer board member interrupted. "She sent you a new price list and a chair with your name scratched off it." Silence again, this time thicker, like a closing door. And then the death sentence, spoken softly. "I think it's time we considered a mutual resignation." The CEO's jaw tensed. No protest, no speech. Just the slack-faced realization that this chapter of his career would now end with a footnote starring the woman he'd dismissed in front of his entire team. By 3 p.m., press release was drafted. By 5 p.m., Lauren's phone buzzed. Unknown number, she answered anyway. Miss Michaels came a voice like overboiled oatmeal. The board wanted to reach out and explore the possibility of a return, in some capacity. We believe your leadership would be. She didn't let him finish. Pass, she said, and ended the call. Then she flipped her phone face down, leaned back on her couch, and exhaled through a quiet smile. They'd finally seen her. Too bad they'd gone blind before it mattered. 3 weeks later, the product launch went live, if you could call it that. It limped onto the market with a broken press release, 2 glitches in the demo video, and a last-minute design compromise that made it incompatible with half the components they'd promised it would replace. The new CEO, a finance guy with all the charisma of a saltine, stood in front of a lukewarm backdrop and read off a teleprompter like he'd just learned vowels. They called it adaptive innovation. Lauren called it duct tape in a tuxedo. She watched the live stream on mute from the corner of a quiet cafe in the arts district. Rain pattered gently against the windows, soft jazz oozed from an overhead speaker, and her mug, that mug, sat in her hand, a thin curl of steam tracing the air like smoke from a just-fired bullet. Across from her, no one noticed. No cameras, no entourage. Just a woman drinking coffee, watching an empire she once fueled struggle to run on fumes. Her phone buzzed. One new email from Ava, her assistant. Subject, FYI, final contract signed, body, competitor deal locked. Supplier retains exclusivity rights, terms non-negotiable. They agreed without edits. You were right about their pain point. Congrats, boss, Lauren sipped. The coffee was dark roast. An apologetic like her. Outside the cafe window, traffic pulsed by, unaware, indifferent. The world kept turning, just without the illusion that she needed anyone's permission to steer. She glanced at her reflection in the glass, still, sharp, not smiling exactly, but close. The kind of expression you wear when the weight that used to crush you is now resting quietly in your hands. No speeches, no revenge monologue, no dramatic voiceover, just a woman with a mug. Contract, and the kind of power no one gives you, you take it and keep it. From silence to sovereign, the end didn't need applause, it already happened. This story hits especially hard because it's not about revenge, it's about respect. Lauren didn't raise her voice, she raised the stakes. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful moves happen after you walk out, not while you're still fighting to be heard. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the Coffee Pot strikes again.